Welcome to my American History Notes, where I discuss things that I've learned from American history and draw conclusions which you might not agree with, probably won't. I'm a Bible believing Christian, specifically the King James Bible. And so I have drawn conclusions based on my religious beliefs, which you may not share, which is fine. I enjoy disagreement, I enjoy diversity of opinion. Um, it's just important that you come to your own conclusions from studying it yourself. That's what's important to me. And I hope that some of the things I say, even if they make you angry, will spur you on to pick up a book, several books, and some papers, research papers, and just look and study it yourself. So we're talking about social movements of the 19th and 20th centuries, and we're going to talk today about feminism. So, isn't this does not do it justice? This is just a brief overview to get you interested in looking yourself into things and help me understand it a little bit. So I'm going to begin here. The feminist movement prides itself on being about making things fair for women. On the surface, that does seem like a good thing. After all, God's word does make certain things quite clear about the relationship between the sexes and a woman's role in the family and society. Read Galatians 3:28 in the King James Version. Galatians 3:28, and then read Proverbs 31:10 and following after that. Plus, look at a description of Lydia in Acts 16:14. And these are to be balanced with Titus 2:5 and Ephesians 5:21. And if you're a King James Bible believer, start where the paragraph mark is. Excuse me, and following, and 1 Peter 3:1. But modern feminism also seeks to, quote, liberate women from all dependence upon men and from the traditional roles of nurturer and mother that God and society has given them. A Christian must be very careful in adopting feminist dogma that is non biblical. The family is the basic unit of all civilization, and the mother is the bedrock of the family. Without women willing to be mothers, there is no civilization. In fact, at least one historical commentator I've read has said that a civilization is only as strong as its women. Be that as it may, let's go on to modern feminism. It is said that there are three waves to the feminist movement in America. It began with the Declaration of Sentiments in 1848 at the 1848 Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York. The first wave had to do with women obtaining the right to vote, called the women's suffrage movement. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony were in the forefront of challenging the system after working against slavery and demanding that women have the right to vote. The evil of slavery can be said to have had a direct effect on the growth of feminism, as many of the heroines of the feminist movement had been abolitionists. Women like Victoria Woodhull, Matilda Jocelyn Gage tried to vote when it was illegal for them to do so and had charges made against them. Stanton and Anthony believed that the abortion was imposed on women by a patriarchal society and believed mistakenly, as it turned out, that if women were free, then abortions would happen far less frequently. The early activists assumed a certain level of religion and civilization among the women whom they were trying to, quote, set free, and did not see that along with feminism would come a new paganism and unbelief. In 1869, Susan B. Anthony wrote a book called The Revolution. In this book, she claimed that all evil came from men's political control over women and their control over women through property and family law. Women suffered a great deal in being denied the legal rights that men had control over because men often did not live up to God's calling upon their lives in the treatment of women. The civil law effectively prevented women from being anything but second class citizens and made them dependent upon the goodwill of the men in their lives, which was often lacking. The 19th Amendment affording the women the right to vote was considered a triumph for the first wave of feminism and was accompanied by reforms in the workplace and in education. And it must be noted that the prohibition movement, which became a constitutional amendment, uh, played into this because what happened was right wing groups like the Ku Klux Klan, far right wing, extreme right wing groups like the Ku Klux Klan and other right wing groups supported the women's right to vote because they believed that women who suffered the most from alcohol would support prohibition if they voted. And so there was a devil's bargain made, but this helped push the 19th Amendment through. And I have some sources that say that. If you have questions, I'll give you the books and you can do the search yourself. Now, the satisfaction with the gains of the first wave of feminism could not hope to survive long after World War II. During the war, many women took over the roles of men in factories, providing our armed forces with much needed supplies and equipment. It was naive to assume that they would then be satisfied in returning to home after having had the freedom to work outside of the home and to mix as equals with men in the workplace. Starting in the 1960s and through the 1980s, a second wave of feminism began to unfold where the status of women in society in general was questioned. The Kennedy administration and Eleanor Roosevelt had the Commission on the Status of Women in 1963, which concluded that women were being mistreated in every aspect of American life. That commission's findings were reinforced by the releasing in that same year of Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique. In the next year, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 afforded women a legal remedy for discrimination, but society did not change quickly enough for the more radical feminists. In 1966, the National Organization for Women was formed with the acronym NOW. Pretty soon, you had other organizations who had addressed the claim of inequality for minority women. As the first wave of feminism was inextricably linked to the abolition of slavery, so the second wave of feminism was linked to the demand for, quote, equal rights for blacks and other minorities through the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In 1972, the act was amended. Title IX, the Educational Amendment of 1972, provided for equal access in schools of higher learning and resulted in such things as lawsuits because the college spent more on the men's football team than on the girls' volleyball team. This was seen as discriminatory. However, the vast majority of the complaints simply were not pursued, perhaps partly because it was realized they were ridiculous. With such political successes in the field of women's rights, an attempt was made to ratify an amendment to the Constitution called the Equal Rights Amendment. This proposed amendment, whose time limit for ratification has come and gone with no success, called for an absolute equality between the sexes under the Constitution. The wording is vague and the amendment was brief. It was felt by many that too many excesses would have been possible if it had been passed. The amendment had initially been drafted in 1923 by Alice Paul, who believed that the 19th Amendment was just the beginning. She called it the Lucretia Mott Amendment at the 75th anniversary of the 1848 Women's Rights Convention. It was proposed as an amendment to the Constitution in 1972, and its deadline passed in 1979. Opponents of the ERA, as the amendment was called, such as Phyllis Schlafly, predicted that the amendment would lead to men abandoning their families, unisex toilets, gay marriage, and women being drafted into the military. The third wave of feminism began in the 1990s. After the failure of Anita Hill's allegations of sexual harassment failed to derail Clarence Thomas's nomination to the Supreme Court, many called for a third wave of feminism. The third wave would include a strong lesbian homosexual contingent and also a strong environmental contingent. Third wave feminism is centered on young, upwardly mobile women and their identity as women alone rather than in their relationship with men. Men are basically irrelevant in third wave feminism, or they are in the way of a full expression of woman's identity, whatever that means, apart from the core family unit of civilization. In the religion of feminism, abortion is a sacrament, and abortion rights for any reason or for no reason at all are fundamental to the movement. This is not limited to just women and men. Women and men have defined themselves apart from the family as well. Our civilization, as some writers have lamented, teeters on the verge of collapse as a result. That's some of the right wing people have said. Now, so we'll continue and understand this movement and other movements that I've mentioned and will mention have their origins in the academic and philosophical underpinnings from the French Revolution and the revolutionary age we're in. We are in a revolutionary age and have been so since the French Revolution. The last 200 years has been a reversal of every tradition and a rejection in many cases of all morality and authority. So we are in a situation, a long-lasting period of revolution. So this is just one of the aspects of it, and it's tied to the other aspects. As I've been reading the writings of Herbert Marcuse, Marxist psychiatric type philosopher from the 1950s and 60s, and others, they all, and also an introduction to critical race theory, they all tie all of these things in together as all coming from the same spark, and they discuss them. So they're all connected. All these things are connected, and basically what we call connected to what we call Marxism, or what people on the right call cultural Marxism, which the left calls a racist thing and all that stuff. But the thing is that it's admitted that they're connected by their own proponents. When you read their works, don't watch their news articles, news. Read what the people are saying. So for all the good things about feminism and the things that were necessary to fix, to correct in our society, the excesses of it are what is in the process of derailing the culture. All right, so now we're going to talk about abortion next. Very important topic, especially today. And we'll continue next time. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you'll study American history and come to your own conclusions.